Welcome to Fix It for Josh's Sake, and you guessed it, I'm Josh. Today I want to take you along on a video where I changed the choke cable on this 1980 Honda Goldwing GL1100 Interstate. The cable was broke when I bought the bike this spring, and I figured out a little hack to get it to work for, well, let's say 2 months here, and now it's just not working the way we need it to properly warm up the engine. So I got a new cable in the mail, and I'm going to take you along the process of putting that new cable in. Thank you for joining me. First things first, this is my now OE cable. I know it used to be a choke cable, but it's a little wore out, and I ended up cutting the collar in half. This was a real tall nut, and I cut it in half so I could thread one side on the plate and the other side on the plate, and that kind of worked for a while, but now everything's wore out and the choke doesn't stay. So that cable runs down, goes underneath down by the triple tree, comes around, and somehow pops out right here where it activates all 4 carburetors. And so we're going to go on a little journey here and figure out where in the world that comes through. Then I'll show you how I pull the next one, the brand new one, into place. The first thing we see is that it goes down here and it disappears right there underneath the triple tree. And so that's difficult to see. My next thought is, well, let's open up the little fake gas tank here, and I'm going to pull out the little glove box deal, the air cleaner, and see if I can get a better visual. Give me a second. First thing I'm going to want to do is pull this wing nut out, and then that'll let me take the cap off to get to my air cleaner that's in here. Wow, things are a little crusty in here, but we did find what we're looking for right there. This is one of my throttle cables. This is the other throttle cable. And down in here, below both of them, is the choke cable. All right, so it's tucked down in there. So we now know a little more about the routing. It comes out here, goes down, comes in front of the forks, goes above the triple tree right there, comes down alongside the air filter cavity here above the carburetors, and then it disappears down in there and pops out right here on the right side of the back of the carburetor. So now we're going to start unscrewing some things and work on pulling that cable out. Now that we know where that cable's routed, we got to go ahead and break it loose. So we're going to take this clip off. It's a Phillips screw, and so we'll just pop the screwdriver in there, put some really good solid down pressure so that you can make sure you don't round out the grooves in that Phillips. There, that came out real easy. I mean, I did have this cracked loose a couple months ago, so it loves me now. And then you just pull your cable forward, and the release is farther out here. You can see the notch in there. Once we get enough slack to pull this forward, that'll come out. There is a decent amount of play in this cable, so I just pulled it forward, and then we just are able to go like that, and it pops right out. And now we're free and clear on this end. Now here's the trick up my sleeve that makes my life a lot easier. I got myself a piece of rope here. It's like a shoestring, and or like rip cable, and it's got a slip knot in it. I'm going to slip it up over top of this bead right here, tighten it down real good, and then I'm going to pull this cable through. It's going to come on inside of the gas tank here. It's going to come around by the shocks, top of the triple tree. It's going to come out right here. Well, then I'll have a rope fished all the way through there, and when we put our new cable in, I'm just going to be able to pull this back through the exact same routing, and it'll pop out right here where we need to put it in place. Let me elaborate on how I do this. So this is the center of the rope, split right down the middle, and then you grab it and you bring it around on itself so that we have the loop like this, and then we're going to let that go onto the cable housing, and I'm going to pull it tight. Now the reason why I'm expounding on that is because if you tie any other kind of knot, you're going to have a bunch of goobers and junk that gets in the way and doesn't help with the flow of pulling that rope through. But this way, we have a nice, clean line, no bigger than the size of the cable housing, so it should easily pull through and pull back the new cable. Now let's move up here to the OE cable, OE choke. We're gonna go ahead and loosen the nuts that are on this plate right here. So we got one on the top and one on the bottom. And like I said, when I got this, the bottom nut was shattered, broken apart. So I was able to cut this nut in half and use it on the top and the bottom. But what that does is it allows us to pull this cable out of the way. So it has to go down below. This hole, even though there's a slot, is only big enough for the choke rod right here, the top part of the cable. You can't pull this housing out that slot, which is a nice little safety feature. You can see this comes through, but there's no way you would get the threaded section through. So you got to drop it down and then pull it out like that. And now we've got ourselves, the cable is free and we can start pulling it through. When I'm starting to pull this cable, what I like to do is have one hand on one side, and then I like to bring my other hand over here on this side and start to feel it feeding, because you can actually feel the bind ups or the tension if there is any bad routing happening. You can feel it by the pressure back and forth on each end of the cable as you walk it through. Eventually, obviously, you have to let go of this because successfully it's going to pull through the frame and up and come all the way out here. But that's how I start, and it helps me feel what's going on. As I'm checking the freedom of that cable pulling through there, I can tell that it is getting bound up or pressed pretty tight underneath this air box. So you take out this 10mm bolt, you take out that 10mm bolt, this lifts straight up, and that gives us the ability to move this air box up and out of the way. We're not going to take it out of this entire gas tank looking compartment, but we're just giving it some ability to move up so that the cable can slide through easily. All right, now that that's up out of the way, I kind of wedged it between this back member. It's just plastic, it's flexible. So because it's wedged in there, it stays up out of the way, and we have tons of room now under here to pull the cable through. And then the second thing I needed to do was I went and got myself a bungee cord, because this thing, yes, it's spring loaded, but it sits like right in the way. So now if we put a bungee cord on it, we got it way up where we can kind of see what we're doing in here, but still see what we're going to do over here. We're winning. All right, now that we've got the cable pulled all the way through and there's the rope, I am going to swap ends on this new cable and pull it back through. Now that your cables are swapped, you want to thread this hex nut down off of the thread assembly, and you'll notice that there is a flat spot here and the rest of the threads are rounded. Okay, well, that is to match the rounded part of this bracket and the flat spot of that bracket, which allows us to pull this down, bring it over top, and then we set the notch right in just like that, where it fits perfectly. And now that cable can't spin or twist or change on us as we tighten this up here. It just comes into place and everything's nice and snug. And what's kind of slick about this cable is that it's got this nice rubber collar on the top there, which should help keep moisture from getting down into the cable and messing things up. So I like the look of that. That looks pretty good to me. Now we come to the other side of the bike where we're at the back of the carburetor here. Take our cable in, we slide it into the slot that's running the choke mechanism, and then we push the cable up and get it in place here so that that little bracket that we unscrewed with the Phillips screwdriver in the beginning holds the aluminum housing at the end of the cable. So I'm going to hold that like that, and then I'm going to get myself a Phillips screwdriver, and again, make sure you have really direct pressure into that screw so that you don't round out the tip. All right, that's nice and tight. Let's give it a pull over here and see if it works. All right. Oh, there we go. Look at that. We got choke back in action. All right, good deal. One detail I need to mention is that as we pulled this airbox up, it did cause this crankcase air hose to come off up in there. So when you're done putting in your cable, make sure you go back in and hook that hose back up so that your crankcase is breathing fresh air, clean air, not sucking garbage in just through the open hose there. Hey, thanks for following along on Fix It for Josh's Sake as we change the choke cable on this 1980 Honda Goldwing 1100. I want to mention one thing I noticed in the process of ordering cables is this cable is 43 inches long. The housing is 41 inches, the cable's 43 inches long. There are some sellers out on like eBay and Amazon selling Goldwing 1100 choke cables, and they are 35 inches long, with the inner cable being 37 inches long. You will not have the length you need to properly run that choke cable from the top of the triple tree down through the frame and to the carburetor choke assembly if you buy a 35-inch cable. So make sure you know the length of it, or you'll be coming up a little bit short. I guess they say not everything is created equal. Well, in choke cables, it's a fact. Thanks for watching and joining me along. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please like my channel, subscribe, make a comment, tell some people about it, and enjoy the process of working on your stuff as we fix it for Josh's sake.